It is not the economy. It is not your boss. It is not the government, the taxes, or the price of bread. These are merely the walls of the maze. They are physical obstacles, and physical obstacles can be climbed. But what if the reason you struggle, the reason you feel a crushing weight on your chest every time you look at your bank account, has nothing to do with the world outside? What if the enemy is inside the house? There is a parasite, not a biological one, but a mimetic one, a thought form, a single insidious belief that has been planted in your mind so deep you mistake it for your own personality. It whispers to you when you are about to succeed. It pulls your hand back when you reach for an opportunity. It is the architect of your self-sabotage. The archive has analyzed thousands of financial profiles. We have studied the poor, the middle class, and the elite, and we have isolated the variable. The difference is not IQ. It is not luck. It is the presence or absence of this one belief. Most people die without ever knowing they were infected. They live their entire lives fighting a war against a ghost, never realizing that the weapon keeping them poor is held in their own hand. Tonight, we perform the surgery. We will locate this belief. We will expose its origins, whether they are biological, historical, or orchestrated. And we will attempt to remove it. But be warned, the mind protects its parasites. You will feel resistance. You will feel anger. You may want to click away. That is the parasite trying to survive. Do not let it win. Anchor yourself to the truth. Subscribe to the archive. Ring the bell to notify the algorithm that you are awake. Secure your connection now. Once we begin, there is no turning back. To understand the belief, we must first understand the soil in which it grows. You did not create your relationship with money. You inherited it. Scientists call it epigenetics. The archive calls it the bloodline curse. Trauma leaves a chemical scar on your DNA. If your grandfather starved, if your great-grandmother lived in fear of the rent collector, that fear was encoded into your biology. You are born with a nervous system wired for scarcity. This is the first layer of the belief. There is not enough. But this is not just nature. It is history. The ancient conditioning of the working class, why staying small once kept you alive. For most of human history, poverty was not a failure. It was a survival strategy. To understand why so many people today subconsciously sabotage wealth, success, and visibility, you must stop looking at modern economics and start looking at ancient fear. The fear did not begin with capitalism. It began long before money as we know it existed, when survival depended entirely on not standing out. For over 1,000 years, your ancestors were trained, systematically, brutally, to believe that wanting more was dangerous. Not just socially dangerous, lethally dangerous. This conditioning did not disappear. It evolved. The serfdom mindset, poverty as divine order. From roughly the 9th century through the early modern period, the majority of Europeans lived under feudal systems. Kings ruled by divine right. Lords owned the land. The church sanctified the hierarchy. And peasants, your ancestors, were told a single, relentless story. You were born here because God put you here. To want more was not ambition, it was heresy. Serfdom was not merely economic, it was psychological architecture. A peasant was taught from birth that their suffering was virtuous, their labor sacred, and their obedience rewarded in the afterlife, not this one. Medieval sermons reinforced this constantly. The poor were closer to God. The rich were sinful, corrupt, damned. Envy was a mortal sin. Aspiration was rebellion against divine will. To step outside your station was to disrupt the natural order. And disruptions were punished, publicly, violently. Medieval tapestries tell this story visually. Kings sit elevated, robed in gold, framed by divine light. Peasants bend low, faceless, interchangeable, swallowed by fields and mud. The message was unmistakable. You are small, stay small. And for centuries, staying small worked. The evil eye. Why visibility was dangerous. Long before kings and churches, tribal humans learned a harsher lesson. If you appeared to have more than the group, you became a threat. Anthropologists call this the fear of the evil eye, a belief found in nearly every ancient culture. The idea was simple but deadly serious. If you display wealth, success, or abundance, others will envy you. Envy leads to violence. Violence leads to death or exile. In small tribes, exile was a death sentence. So humans learned to hide success. Hunters downplayed their kills. Families concealed surplus. Prosperity was shared or destroyed rather than displayed. Being poor, or appearing poor, was camouflage. This was not weakness, it was intelligence. Imagine a lone sheep stepping away from the flock. Wolves do not attack the group. They attack the visible one. Your ancestors internalized this lesson deeply. Visibility equals danger. That instinct never left the nervous system. Punishment as social control. When someone broke the rule, when a peasant acquired land, when a merchant gained influence, when a commoner dressed too well, the response was swift. They were accused of greed, witchcraft, pride, betrayal, moral corruption. History is filled with examples of people being humiliated, stripped of assets, imprisoned or killed, not for crimes, but for transgressing social boundaries. This trained entire populations to self-police. No guards were needed if fear lived inside the mind. People learned to reject opportunity, distrust wealth, shame ambition, attack those who rose too quickly. This behavior wasn't moral, it was evolutionary. The industrial shift, chains without shackles. When feudalism faded, the conditioning did not. It simply changed uniforms. Factories replaced fields. Managers replaced lords. Paychecks replaced bread allotments. But the hierarchy remained, and so did the psychology. Industrial workers were taught, be grateful you have a job. Don't question authority. Don't expect more. Don't get too big for your boots. The medieval tapestry became the corporate org chart. At the top, executives, shareholders, invisible decision makers. At the bottom, workers, numbered, replaceable. The message stayed the same. Know your place. Modern manifestations. Tall poppy syndrome. Today, this ancient conditioning surfaces in socially acceptable language. We call it tall poppy syndrome. If someone rises too fast, earns too much, or becomes too visible, society instinctively moves to cut them down. We say, "Filthy rich. They must have cheated. No one needs that much money." Money changes people. Notice the language. Wealth is framed as moral contamination. This is not rational economic critique. It is ancestral memory. The tribe still fears the one who stands out. The nervous system still associates success with danger. And so people unconsciously sabotage themselves, turning down opportunities, undercharging, staying invisible, shrinking their desires. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack intelligence, but because for thousands of years, staying small kept their bloodline alive. Why this conditioning is now killing you. Here is the brutal truth. The world your ancestors adapted to no longer exists. Visibility no longer leads to exile. Wealth no longer paints a target for spears. Success no longer invites wolves. But your nervous system does not know that, so it whispers lies. Don't try too hard. Don't stand out. Who do you think you are? People like us don't get rich. What once protected your lineage is now suffocating your future. In a modern economy, invisibility does not equal safety. It equals stagnation. The wolves are gone, but you are still hiding in the flock. The uncomfortable conclusion: you are not broken. You are well trained. Your fear of wealth, visibility, and ambition is not a personal flaw. It is a historical inheritance. A survival script written over centuries of punishment, envy, and divine conditioning. But survival is no longer the goal. Expansion is. The tragedy is not that your ancestors stayed small. The tragedy is that you no longer have to, and still do. Staying small once kept them alive. Today it is slowly killing everything you could become. Think back. What did you hear at the dinner table? Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people are greedy. These were not facts. These were spells, incantations cast by your parents to pass the parasite to you. We need to see the data. What was the money spell cast in your household? What is the phrase that plays on a loop in your head when you spend money? Type it in the comments. Exercise it by naming it. Type the phrase below. Now we approach the core, the heart of the infection. This is the specific belief that keeps the good people poor and the bad people rich. It is the belief that poverty is virtue, and conversely, that wealth is sin. Civilization has been programmed with a binary code. To be good, you must struggle. To be rich, you must exploit. Therefore, if you are a good person, your subconscious mind will refuse to let you keep money, because to your subconscious, money equals a loss of innocence. This is why you self-sabotage. This is why, when you finally get a bonus, the car breaks down. Or you lend it to a friend who never pays you back. Or you spend it on things you don't need. You are frantically trying to get rid of the money to return to your virtuous state of struggle. But here is the forbidden knowledge. What if this morality was engineered? Control theory, the lie that keeps you manageable. If you want to understand why entire populations stay poor while a small minority accumulates wealth, you must stop thinking in terms of luck or intelligence and start thinking in terms of control. Because poverty was never just an accident, it was useful. For centuries, institutions learned a brutal truth. A population struggling to survive is easier to manage than one that is secure, educated, and independent. Hungry people don't rebel. Exhausted people don't organize. Hope deferred to another life neutralizes rage in this one. This is the foundation of what we'll call control theory, the opiate of the masses, promises that pacify. The phrase opiate of the masses is often quoted casually, but its implications are darker than most people realize. Religious and state institutions discovered early on that suffering needs a story, or it turns into rebellion. So they provided one. For the poor, the story went like this: your poverty is virtuous. Your suffering has meaning. Your reward is coming, later. This world is temporary. The next one is eternal. If you truly believe that riches in heaven await you, then demanding fairness on earth feels greedy, impatient, even sinful. And it worked. Peasants labored their entire lives believing obedience was holiness. Workers endured brutal industrial conditions, convinced that endurance made them morally superior. Revolt was framed not as justice, but as corruption of the soul. Meanwhile, the institutions preaching humility were surrounded by gold. This wasn't hypocrisy, it was strategy. A population convinced that poverty is noble will police itself. No soldiers required. Why revolutions are rare. Here's the part they don't like you thinking about. Revolutions don't fail because people lack courage. They fail because people are psychologically disarmed. If you believe, wanting more makes you bad. Wealth is inherently immoral. Success requires exploitation. Then even when opportunity appears, you reject it. You don't storm the castle. You defend it, because deep down, you believe it should exist. That belief was cultivated deliberately. The zero-sum fallacy, a convenient illusion. One of the most effective control mechanisms ever implanted is the idea that money is zero-sum. The belief goes like this: for you to have more, someone else must have less. So if someone is wealthy, they must have stolen it. If you get ahead, you must have harmed someone. If you want more, you are morally suspect. This belief feels intuitive. It is also false. Money is not a fixed pie. It is created through value creation. New ideas, new systems, new efficiencies, new products, new services. When electricity replaced candles, value was created. When the internet replaced physical storefronts, value was created. When software replaced paperwork, value was created. No one was robbed. The pie got bigger. But a population that understands this becomes dangerous, because they stop fighting each other and start questioning who controls the rules of creation. So the zero-sum myth persists. It keeps the poor suspicious of the successful instead of curious about how success is created. Divide, distract, contain. Notice how often wealth discussions are framed emotionally instead of structurally. We argue about good rich versus bad rich, deserving versus undeserving, who should feel guilty, but rarely about how money is actually created, who controls access to leverage, why financial education is absent from schools. This is not accidental. A divided working class is a manageable working class. The Noble Victim, a story you've been fed since childhood. Control does not work without cultural reinforcement. Enter modern storytelling. Movies, books, and television repeat the same narrative with religious consistency. The poor are authentic, joyful, morally pure. The rich are cold, lonely, corrupt, or secretly miserable. Think about it. In Titanic, the joy is in steerage. The music, laughter, and romance happen among the poor. The wealthy decks are sterile, arrogant, heartless. In countless films, the villain is rich. The hero is broke but honest. If the hero becomes wealthy, it's usually at the very end, after they've proven they didn't want it. This is not art reflecting reality. This is programming. The message is subtle but relentless. If you want wealth, you must lose your soul. So people choose poverty, not consciously but psychologically, because it feels safer, purer, more socially acceptable. Sacrifice as virtue. Old propaganda posters told workers to sacrifice for the greater good. Modern culture does the same, just with better lighting. Hustle is praised, but only if it leads back to the same system. Ambition is celebrated, but only in controlled doses. Wanting enough is acceptable. Wanting more is framed as greed. The noble victim narrative keeps people locked in effort without ownership. You can work endlessly, just don't accumulate leverage. The lie beneath the lie. Here is the part that feels uncomfortable. If wealth were truly evil, those in power would not hoard it. If money truly corrupted absolutely, institutions would refuse it. They don't. They accumulate it, protect it, and pass it down, while teaching everyone else to distrust it. That is not moral teaching. That is containment. Why this still works today. Control no longer requires chains. It requires beliefs. Beliefs like, people like me don't get rich. Money changes you. I just want to be comfortable. Comfortable people don't disrupt systems. Uncomfortable people do, but only if they believe disruption is justified. Control theory ensures they don't. The reveal. This isn't about blaming religion, art, or history. It's about recognizing a pattern. A population that believes poverty is virtuous will never demand wealth. A population that believes wealth is immoral will never pursue it. A population that believes money is stolen will never learn to create it. That is the lie. And once you see it, it becomes very difficult to unsee. The programming runs deep. You might be feeling defensive right now. You might be thinking, but rich people are greedy. That is the defense mechanism kicking in. If you are brave enough to challenge your own mind, check your subscription. Ensure the notification bell is on. We are about to dismantle the final layer of the trap. Theory 1 says it is biology. Theory 2 says it is morality. But Theory 3 is the most unsettling of all. Theory 3 suggests that the scarcity you fear does not exist. It is a simulation, a hologram projected over reality to keep you running on the wheel. Money is not real. It is not gold. It is not wheat. It is fiat. It is let it be done. It is printed from nothing. It is digital entries on a server. There is no limit to how much money exists. The government prints trillions in seconds. So why do you believe it is scarce? Because you have been taught to view money as a physical object, like a pie that runs out. But the elite view money as energy, like electricity. It does not run out, it flows. The one belief that keeps you poor is the belief in the finite. You are playing a game of musical chairs, terrified the music will stop. The rich own the orchestra. The two mindsets, linear slavery versus exponential freedom. Everything you have been taught about money assumes one quiet lie, that effort and reward are linked linearly. Work more hours, earn more money. Work fewer hours, earn less. This belief feels natural because it mirrors the human body. You get tired. You need rest. Time moves forward 1 second at a time. But wealth does not obey biological rules. It obeys structural rules. And the moment you see the difference, the old model collapses. The consumer mindset, living inside the hourglass. The consumer, or employee mindset, is built on one exchange: time for money. It doesn't matter whether you wear a uniform or a suit. The mechanism is the same. You show up, you perform tasks. You are compensated per unit of time. The hourglass is always visible. Every shift empties it a little more. Every paycheck confirms the trade. And here is the trap. Time is finite. There are only so many hours in a day. Only so many productive years in a life. So no matter how hard you work, your income hits a ceiling. This is not an insult. It is math. Yet society romanticizes this model. Hard work is framed as moral superiority, even when it produces exhaustion instead of freedom. Why? Because a linear system is predictable, and predictability is controllable. Consumption as distraction. The consumer mindset doesn't end with employment. It extends into spending. Earn, spend, repeat. Products promise relief, identity, status. Each purchase becomes a temporary salve for a deeper anxiety. Time is running out. The system needs you consuming, not creating. Spending, not building. Because consumption keeps money moving away from you. You become the endpoint, not the source. The creator mindset, stepping outside the clock. The creator mindset begins with a heretical idea. Your time is too valuable to sell repeatedly. Creators ask a different question. How do I build something once that pays me many times? This is the moment income detaches from the body. A book written once can sell for decades. Software built once can serve millions. Capital invested once can compound indefinitely. Here, time becomes an input, not the limit. The hourglass disappears. The graph curves upward. This is why creators and investors think differently. They are not racing against the clock. They are designing systems that outlive effort. Exponential reality. Why wealth looks like magic. To a linear mind, exponential growth feels unfair or fake. How can someone make money while sleeping? Why do they earn more without working harder? Because the system is no longer linear. Exponential systems start slowly, almost invisibly. Then they accelerate beyond intuition. This is why most people quit too early. They expect immediate proportional reward. Wealth compounds the way cells divide, not the way muscles strain. And once compounding starts, effort becomes optional. The fractal pattern. Look at how wealth actually behaves. It doesn't stack, it replicates. Money buys assets. Assets produce cash flow. Cash flow buys more assets. The pattern repeats at every scale, like a fractal expanding infinitely. The same logic applies whether you're reinvesting $100 or $10 million. This is not greed. It is physics. Energy flows toward structures that allow it to multiply. The abundance frequency. Why fear repels wealth. Here the conversation turns strange, because it must. Across cultures and philosophies, there is a shared observation. Money goes where it is welcomed, not morally, energetically. If you associate money with guilt, corruption, danger, or loss of identity, you send a clear signal: I am not safe with this. And systems, human or otherwise, avoid unsafe containers. People who fear money self-sabotage. They undercharge, avoid scaling, reject opportunity, or destroy wealth the moment it arrives, not consciously, nervously. Abundance requires permission. Scarcity as signal. Scarcity thinking compresses attention. It narrows options. It forces short-term decisions. This is why the poor are pushed into high-interest debt and short-term survival loops. Their mental bandwidth is consumed by urgency. Wealth, on the other hand, expands time perception. It allows patience, strategy, and long-term thinking. The difference is not intelligence, it is mental bandwidth. You don't chase money, you become a conduit. Creators and investors don't chase money. They build channels. They design structures, businesses, assets, IP, systems that money can move through efficiently. This is why money seems to find them. It's not luck, it's architecture. The threshold moment. The shift from consumer to creator is not about hustle. It's about identity. Consumers ask, what do I get paid? What can I afford? What does this cost? Creators ask, what problem do I solve? What system can I build? How does this scale? One lives inside the hourglass. The other designs the fractal. The final reframe. Poverty trained you to think small because small was safe. Wealth requires you to think in systems, not hours. Patterns, not paychecks. Flow, not force. This is why the transition feels destabilizing. You are not just learning new strategies, you are violating ancient conditioning. But once you see wealth as physics instead of morality, the fear dissolves. You stop asking whether you deserve it. You start asking whether you've built the container. The choice: linear or exponential, hourglass or fractal, consumer or creator. One trades life for money. The other builds something that gives life back. And once you understand the difference, there is no neutral ground. Look at your life. Are you building a wall to keep poverty out? Or are you building a windmill to catch the breeze of wealth? Most people choose security. And security is just a fancy word for prison. Type windmill in the comments if you are ready to stop building walls. Here is the final mechanism, the kill switch in your brain. We call it the financial thermostat. You have a subconscious setting of what you believe you are worth. If your setting is struggle, and you suddenly earn a large sum, your subconscious will panic. It views the wealth as a fever, and it will do everything in its power to cool you down, to get you back to broke. This is why 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within a few years. This is why you earn more, but your savings account never grows. You are not battling the economy. You are battling your own internal setting. Identity shifting, the invisible ceiling. You do not live at the level of your goals. You live at the level of your identity. This is the part no economic theory wants to admit, because it cannot be regulated, taxed, or controlled. Before money moves, identity speaks, and most people are speaking a future they don't want. The spell of I am. The most powerful words you ever say are not prayers or affirmations. They are, I am. I am just a teacher. I am not good with money. I am bad at business. I am not that kind of person. These are not descriptions. They are contracts. Your nervous system, your decisions, your risk tolerance, your attention, all organize themselves around whatever comes next in that sentence. The mind's job is consistency, not truth. So if you say, I am someone who struggles, your subconscious will make sure you remain believable. Identity becomes gravity. Roles as cages. Most identities begin as roles: employee, student, parent, helper, victim, good person. Roles are useful until they harden. When a role becomes identity, growth feels like betrayal. Outgrowing your old self triggers guilt because the tribe you came from still recognizes you in the smaller form. So you unconsciously stay where you are, because belonging feels safer than becoming. The chameleon effect. Humans are social chameleons. We adapt our beliefs, language, and ambitions to match our environment. Not because we're weak, but because survival once demanded it. If everyone around you struggles, success feels alien. If wealth is mocked, wanting it feels shameful. If ambition is punished, staying modest feels moral. You don't need trauma to be limited. You just need mirrors. And most mirrors reflect smallness. Imposter syndrome, the guardian at the gate. Imposter syndrome isn't a flaw. It's a security system. It activates when your external results outpace your internal identity. You start succeeding, and suddenly there's a voice. You don't belong here. They'll find out. This isn't really you. That voice is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to preserve coherence. The subconscious prefers familiar pain to unfamiliar freedom. So it creates anxiety, procrastination, self-doubt, anything to pull you back to the old set point. Not because success is dangerous, but because change is. The thermostat problem. Most people think money is a goal. It's not. It's a thermostat setting. You have an internal set point, an amount of success, comfort, visibility, and wealth that feels normal. When life drifts above it, you self-correct. When it drops below, you hustle back up. This is why. Windfalls disappear. Promotions lead to burnout. Lottery winners go broke. The identity pulls reality back into alignment. Until the identity changes, nothing else sticks. Rewiring the set point. Identity shifting does not happen through willpower. It happens through exposure and environment. You recalibrate by spending time around people who normalize abundance, seeing wealth without moral judgment, replacing envy with curiosity, practicing gratitude to signal safety, not lack. Gratitude is not about being content with less. It's about telling your nervous system, more is not a threat. Envy, on the other hand, is a signpost. It shows you where your identity wants to expand, but doesn't feel permitted to yet. The mirror crack. At some point, the old reflection fractures. You realize you are not your job. You are not your past. You are not the story you inherited. Behind the cracked mirror is a different self, one who moves differently, speaks differently, expects differently. Not arrogant, aligned. This is the moment identity shifts from defensive to creative. You stop asking, "Who am I allowed to be?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" Becoming is uncomfortable. Identity shifting feels like loss before it feels like gain. You may outgrow relationships, feel lonely in new rooms, miss the comfort of being underestimated. This is normal. A chameleon mid-change is most vulnerable when its colors don't match anything yet. But that in-between state is where transformation happens. The final truth. Money does not respond to effort alone. It responds to identity alignment. You cannot outperform who you believe you are. But the moment your I am changes, your choices follow, your tolerance expands, your opportunities multiply. Not because the world changed, because you did. The question that ends the old story. So the real question is not, how do I make more money? It is, who must I become so that more money feels natural? When you answer that honestly, the mirror stops lying. And what looks back at you is no longer a worker, a victim, or a bystander, but a creator who finally recognizes themselves. The one belief is this: I am not enough. Because you believe you are not enough, you believe there is not enough out there for you. You believe you must suffer to be worthy. You believe wealth is for them, not us. This belief serves the system. It keeps the factories staffed. It keeps the debt paid. It keeps the pyramid standing. But you are no longer a brick in the pyramid. You are the eye at the top. We have exposed the parasite. We have shown you the code. The question is, will you let it reinfect you? Tomorrow morning, when you wake up and the fear creeps in, will you listen to it? We are compiling the Wealth Rewiring Protocols, ancient methods used by the elite to train their children's minds for dominance. We will release them soon. If you want access to the protocols, you must be in the archive. Subscribe. Like this video to burn the algorithm. And finally, I leave you with this test. If a stranger handed you $1 million today, no strings attached, What is the first emotion you would feel? Joy or fear? Be honest. Type your answer in the comments. Your answer determines your future.